And I just started like feeling into what felt different and what felt good. And I'm like, well, what if I put my opposite hand forward? What if I put my opposite leg forward? What if I start to kick the way that I want to kick? What if I start to do a bunch of lead legs? What if I can hold my guard stronger and prevent myself from getting injured if my right hand is up? Can I move faster? Can it be an advantage? Can I work my footwork different than my opponent? Can I be a more questionable fighter where I'm not as predictable to my opponent so that I can maybe catch them off guard, make them hesitate, do some different types of techniques, work on different drills, different combinations that can maybe set me apart from the other competitors. And that's when I started to win. Today's podcast is being okay, being different, trusting that different is going to be okay. And I think I've always sort of perceived life a little bit differently, and the world and how I see systems and how I interpret things and how I read energy has always been very, very different. How I approach things is different. The way that I approach athletics is different. Business, martial arts, all kinds of stuff. And I've never quite seen the world in a way that I feel like my peers have. In school, it felt really isolating because I'd be so excited to raise my hand and talk about my interpretation of a poem or a story or an exchange or a quote. And it would never be the same as anyone else. And it would always throw my teacher sort of off guard because they weren't quite sure how to respond to how I saw that part of the world. And I think it's about taking those different paths and getting to the top of the mountain just like everybody else, but doing a path that is very different and very unorthodox and not common and not well traveled, and figuring out how it's felt and the dynamics of that and how I've gotten to where I've gotten. So I've always seen the world slightly different. And I remember being in elementary school and I was so young and so excited to be accepted and be like a really smart person in the class and have the teacher recognize me and have that good feedback. I mean, I really loved positive feedback and positive reinforcement. And I loved a sense of accomplishment. And I loved acceptance. And I always wanted to be the one that kind of knew the answer and was the first one to know the answer. And I was always excited. And I thought it would help me feel more included, obviously less rejected, more accepted. And it would really help with my self-confidence and make me feel like, okay, I was doing all right in the world. And ever since I was probably in about grade 1, I remember we would do a poem or a story and I'd be the first one to raise my hand. And it would be, how do you understand this poem and what are the meanings and why? And I would write really, really fast and I'd be so pumped and I would kind of like, it would like in the inside of my head, it would all be glitter and unicorns and rainbows and everything was bright and exciting and wonderful and optimistic. And I was like, I have the answer and I have the best answer and I know all the reasons why. And I'd raise my hand and I'd have all my reasons why I saw this the way that I saw it. And I was going to impress my teacher and all my classmates. And I was going to be the first one to get the answer. And so I'd share the answer of what the poem or the story would be. And I remember looking around the classroom, and this has happened thousands of times throughout my life. And their jaws would drop and their eyes would go weird. And they would have no idea what I was talking about. And they did not see the meaning of any of these things in the same way that I did. But I had, 4, 5, 6 answers as to why I saw it the way that I saw it and the meaning behind it and the why behind it. And my teacher would look at me and she wanted to say that I was wrong, but she was never able to because all the answers as to why I got to my answer made sense. It completely made sense. Oh, the bird flew into this nest and had this relationship with the other bird because of A, B, C, D, E. And so I would get these great marks, but my teachers would never understand how I would get to the solutions and the answers that I did, but somehow I was able to make sense of things and kind of get by. That didn't work when it came to math or science and how I got the answers in that, but it definitely worked when it came to social sciences and English and psychology and sociology and things like that, which really helped me to start to come up with the why behind what I do and to become so much more detail orientated and always have the backup to my opinion or doing something differently or having a game plan or having a proposal. And I think I've always carried that now where I can always tell someone 10 reasons why I've made a decision. So I want to talk about a movie that most people, I think, resonate with and know and really, really love. And so if I'm ruining this movie for anyone, it's called It's a Wonderful Life. Please do not listen to this part of the podcast, especially if you've never seen it. And I'm actually kind of hoping that the way that I see the movie might resonate with the way that you see the movie, because the people I've talked to don't see the movie the way that I see the movie. So when you think about It's a Wonderful Life, it's heartwarming, it's a Christmas movie, it's a happy ending, it's good versus evil, it's the person that's really kind and loving and has the family, kind of winning in the end, and seeing everybody just sort of championing for him and being happy. That is not my total take of this movie. I feel like this movie has so many mini plots and nuances and different directions that I spend the entire movie crying. I look at it as a man that was so optimistic and so full of hope and so full of energy and just delight in his eyes about what he was going to be in the world and what he was going to go discover and what he was going to go explore. And he had all of these hopes and he wanted to do so many things, and he had done all the right things in his life and his family and everything else, been the good older brother, been the good son, been the good person in school. And one day he was going to get his chance to do what he wanted for once, not what he thought everyone else wanted for him or what he thought was the right thing to do. And I was so sad throughout this movie because I watched him self-abandon and I watched him self-sacrifice for everybody else time and time and time again. And the sadness that came from it and the resentment that came from it, and how he always felt like a piece of him wasn't there, but he was so drawn to trying to make other people feel good and helping them accomplish their dreams and making the community so full of love and support and compassion and empathy and resources that he just continued to give up all of his hopes and dreams for what he thought everyone else wanted. And then I watched how he never told anybody how he felt and how he always had this underlying sadness and how he felt like he was sort of a martyr in the world. And then you watch how no matter what he did right, he still got screwed in the end. And that bad things happened to good people. And that he really felt like he was the problem and he wasn't enough and he didn't do all the right things. And yet still he was self-abandoning, trying to help his family. And that's why he felt the way that he felt and wanted to commit suicide and wanting to self-sacrifice so his family would be okay. And I look at everything from like how he felt as an entrepreneur and how he was giving so much of himself, and he gave up his wedding and all of his life savings and his trips and his exploration and, having to rebuild his house and everything just for everybody else at the time. And then, like having to wear a mask and having to self-abandon and not ever feeling vulnerable and self-blaming and being ashamed. And then watching in the end how, it was a happy ending, but it was really nice for him to be seen. And really, I think the whole movie was the fact that he didn't feel seen and he self-sacrificed. And in the end, he was actually seen and actually appreciated and actually valued and actually felt like he was part of a community and understood and realized that like maybe his wildest dreams could come true because that sense of exploration and community and that void was finally being filled. But maybe that's how I feel about the story and no one else feels about the story. And every time I've talked about that movie, I'm the only one that describes it that way. And I feel like that's how my life has sort of gone. So, I mean, from being in school to having debate class to always having a different side of the story and a different side to the debate and always trying to find an answer through how I saw things. And it wasn't so black and white. It was always gray, and feeling alone and feeling rejected and feeling like I always had the wrong answer and misunderstood and not doing the right thing and not fitting in my class, to how I see movies, how I cry at movies all the time, and how I cry for different reasons than I think are being portrayed in the movie. And that's based a lot, I think, on my life experience. And then now it's gotten down to, I think, what my life is like. And I've had an experience recently that kind of validated that I'm still in that place where I'm feeling and being super different. And I think it's become something super positive and not something that I should be ashamed about or feel bad about myself with, or have that imposter syndrome yet again that I'm doing everything wrong. So as a lot of people in the martial arts community know that are close to me, is I'm a right-handed southpaw, which means that I'm right-handed, but I also fight right forward. That's a completely different style of fighting than 99.9% of martial arts competitors out there. If you're right-handed, your left hand is in front, your guard is left hand forward, not right hand forward. I am the complete opposite. Also, when you're a kickboxer or you do full contact or Muay Thai, your back leg should be the strongest leg. You should be using the rear leg a lot more. In my case, I'm a lead leg fighter and my right leg is stronger. And so I have that one forward and I fight completely differently. So I thought that I kind of been comfortable because my successes and my world titles and my gold medals have come from me being a southpaw fighter. I lost for years, like years and years and years. And I didn't even win a world gold medal until I switched my stance from an orthodox, which is left forward, which is what I should be, being a right-handed person, to a southpaw, unorthodox fighter. I didn't win a single world title till I did that. I went from fighting, let's say 25 years of my martial arts career, or 22 years of my martial arts career, doing exactly what everyone told me to do, doing exactly what everyone said was right, doing exactly what they said. This is normal. This is what you should be doing. This is right. This is traditional. This is the only way you're going to be successful. This is the way it goes. Why are you trying to switch things up? But then why do you look so awkward? Why is your lead hand dropping all the time? Why are you not winning? Why are you not successful? And I started trying to answer all of the whys. And I just started like feeling into what felt different and what felt good. And I'm like, well, what if I put my opposite hand forward? What if I put my opposite leg forward? What if I start to kick the way that I want to kick? What if I start to do a bunch of lead legs? What if I can hold my guard stronger and prevent myself from getting injured if my right hand is up? Can I move faster? Can it be an advantage? Can I work my footwork different than my opponent? Can I be a more questionable fighter where I'm not as predictable to my opponent so that I can maybe catch them off guard, make them hesitate, do some different types of techniques, work on different drills, different combinations that can maybe set me apart from the other competitors. And that's when I started to win. So that was my first example sort of how I really felt as a competitor that my different was good, that my different was positive, and that my successes were coming because I was doing something so unorthodox and so different. And the way that I saw the world necessarily wasn't wrong anymore. And my path to the top could be successful, even though the path I was taking was one that not a lot of people have taken before, and that I had to kind of forge it on my own. And that led to getting more confidence with how I ran a business, or proposals that I did, or being a promoter, or running events, or taking risks, which was pretty cool. I still do have that voice in my head though, that is from growing up and, the negative feedback that I got where this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Why are you so different? Why are you doing things wrong? Why are you untraditional? Are you breaking all the rules of, martial arts and all the things we've been doing for hundreds of years or thousands of years? You don't have to do things differently to be successful. And so that's still kind of riding in the back of my head. So I went to a particular event where I was going to be coaching. And it was important to me to coach. And I thought that my credentials and my education was well known to this event and to these seminars and kind of coaching camp that I would be doing. So the first few days I step in and there's like other phenomenal coaches that are incredibly talented, and there's incredibly talented fighters, all different kind of diversities. So different sizes, different sort of levels, different rule sets that they were doing. And because I've had to adapt so much and make things more comfortable for other people, I've overtrained in an orthodox stance, and I've trained myself on how to perform in an orthodox traditional stance so that when I'm teaching, I could teach in that way because 90% of people are in that stance and have learned that way and have been coached in that format. But then eventually, as I worked into my coaching, I was seeing people struggle, and I was seeing them have a hard time with tradition and with what everyone else has been doing and with how they were coached, not according to their body, not according to their skill sets, not according to their strength, not according to their agility, but what has been done forever, what the status quo is, what you're told is the right thing to do, what you're told is the right thing for your body, and you just need to conform. It's like being a left-handed person back maybe 100 years ago and being told it was wrong and having your hand slapped by a ruler and then being forced to become right-handed. Like, why? What does that accomplish? Because being left-handed is wrong? No. If we would have let so many more people be left-handed, what kind of creativity would they have had? Would they become more ambidextrous? Would they have had less trauma? Probably. Would they have thought that the way that they were and existed in the world was necessarily wrong? No, they would have felt way more accepted. And they probably would have excelled a lot more in their fields and in their education and in academia if they were just allowed to be themselves. So as I'm coaching, I decide it's time to switch to my southpaw stance and start to actually coach and train and be an example in the way that I fight and the way that's been successful for me and the way that I've been able to problem solve and the way that I've been able to help other unorthodox fighters or even people with special needs or different skill sets or potential injuries or just the way their body mechanics move. So I'm watching these students and I'm being told by other coaches that I'm doing things wrong. So these are people that I respect and these are people I admire and they are phenomenal martial artists, but they're traditionalists. And they're like, why are you in that stance? Why are you moving that way? That combination shouldn't work. Well, how are you doing this? Well, what's your footwork supposed to be like? And I had 5 reasons for every single question that they asked me. And then I watched other students get stuck. And I was like, you don't have to do your traditional stance to accomplish this combination the way that you want to, or to be faster, or to keep your guard up a little bit more, or to confuse your opponent, or to have stronger kicks. So I went around to different fighters and I showed them that they could be different. I showed them that they could do things in a different way. I showed them that they could take some risks and they could be different without having to offend their coaches, without having to be disrespectful, because there's so much respect and admiration for coaches and for martial arts as a sport and as an art that we have to be quite careful with making sure that we are showing respect to our coaches and others and our opponents and the traditional arts of what we're learning. We don't want to make them too modern when we're not comfortable with that yet, and it's not the environment to do so. I love to make martial arts modern, but I also really love tradition. So as I continue to coach, I'm continuing to see the eyebrows of other coaches raise and other students raise, and I'm being further questioned on why I'm doing what I'm doing. The days go on, and I have some conversations with some of the students and with some of the coaches, and they asked my background and they started asking why I did what I did. But I mean, I've been beaten down for 3 or 4 days being told that everything I was doing was wrong and my approach was wrong and my coaching was wrong and the way my hips move are wrong and the way that I hold particular control is wrong, the way I describe things is wrong, to just find out that they were like, this makes sense. You're different. You're making other people feel comfortable. I understand why you're teaching the way that you're teaching. I understand that this teaching is because this is the way you wished you were taught and the way you could have prevented more injuries and you could have felt more confident in what you were doing and more secure in what you were doing and more successful in what you were doing. And it probably would have helped you be successful much earlier than having to conform to what you thought you had had to conform to before. And then I started hearing the feedback that maybe different is good and different is what we need and different is how our organization grows and how our sport grows and how our events grow. And I've always felt that inside. And I've tried to portray it in my teaching and with my students and in my studio. But there's been a lot of times I've second guessed. There's been a lot of times I've had instructors come in that are so uncomfortable with how I teach and how I move and how I perform as a martial artist and how I run things, that there's been a lot of friction and a lot of chaos. And it's for no reason other than they are uncomfortable. They don't like change. What they know is what they know. And what they know makes them feel comfortable and makes them feel successful because they've conformed to what they thought was right. I wonder what they would have felt if they were 7 years old and were actually allowed to do what they felt was best for them and best for their bodies and made them feel most comfortable and most successful as an athlete. And I'm starting to realize that that's what I want to bring to the world. I want to bring to the world that different is good. And even though I felt ashamed so many times and so alone and felt like everything I did was wrong all the time, there is this part of me that has this huge fire and this huge anger and this huge frustration and this huge like burning where I'm like, no, we don't have to do things this way. We can do things the way that are best for us. And if I don't do this, who's going to? Who's going to break the mold? Who's going to show that we can be quite successful taking a different approach? And so maybe being different is a superpower, and being different is how we create these changes, and being different is how we are more accepting, and how we are different actually can end up being healthier for us in the end. Healthier for our mental health, our physical health, our psychological health, healthier in our community. We won't judge each other so much. And maybe it'll just help us to prosper and grow in a much better way. So your different isn't wrong. You don't have to be ashamed of it. You don't have to feel so isolated. You don't have to hold it back. You don't have to filter it. Shine it. It's probably pretty awesome. And you're probably going to give someone else permission to be themselves too.